Good afternoon, it's Edith here from Gardner Web Accounting. It's Sunday afternoon, the 29th of March, and as promised, I'm sending you more information on what support is available for the self-employed. Now, the Chancellor announced the support package last week. We've now been through the detailed guidance, and we have prepared a flow chart and also an Excel spreadsheet to help you assist with estimating how much you would be entitled to and whether you are likely to be eligible or not eligible in the first place.
The very basic concept of the support package that was announced by the Chancellor is that the self-employed people are going to be compensated for their loss of earnings pretty much in line with how employed people would be able to be furloughed. So the concept is that you take an average of your earnings over a period of time, which varies between self-employed people. And once you've taken that average, you take 80% of the annual average and then you divide it by 12. So that would give you your monthly earnings, average earnings at 80%. The Chancellor said that the maximum support is for 3 months. So if you then have your monthly average earning, you multiply that by 3 months. And then he said that any support would be capped at £2,500 per month. So therefore, the maximum amount would be £7,500. So if this figure comes out more than £7,500, then the support would be capped at £7,500. Now, there's also a general exclusion for those people whose average earnings are over £50,000, and the spreadsheet that I've provided would help you calculate this, as well as a general exclusion for those whose self-employed income is less than 50% of their total earnings. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. The first thing we need to do is we need to run through the decision flow chart to see whether you are likely to qualify for the self-employment income support scheme or whether you are not likely to qualify. There are a number of steps to walk through based on our best understanding at the moment. The guidance is not all fully detailed, so please use this with a big disclaimer. This is our estimation based on the information we know now and our best estimates, but by no means is this detailed legislation at the moment that we can follow. The final decision is going to be made by HMRC. It is not clear whether it's going to be on a self-assessment calculation basis or whether HMRC are developing their own systems for us to plug the figures in and for HMRC to then calculate the amount due themselves. I think it's likely to be the latter. I think it's likely that HMRC are going to be telling you what you're entitled to rather than the other way round. The first question is whether you were self-employed at any point between the 6th of April 2016 and the 5th of April 2019. And that might be that you were a sole trader, that might be that you were a partner in a partnership, or that might be that you were a partner in a limited liability partnership. If the answer is no, then this scheme is not for you. If the answer is yes, then we need to carry on. The next question is whether you submitted your self-assessment tax return for the tax year 2018-19. This is the tax return that was due to be filed on the 31st of January 2020. So the vast majority of you, I know, have already submitted these tax returns, with the exception of a few that are still remaining. If you have submitted, then let's carry on. If you haven't yet submitted, then you need to ask yourself the question, do you intend to submit that return by the 23rd of April 2020? If the answer is still no, then once again you're unlikely to qualify for this scheme. But if that return is filed by the 23rd of April 2020, then we can carry on and continue examining the circumstances. There are a few qualifying questions that HMRC said they would ask in addition to what is already known. And one of the questions that I think they are going to ask is whether you continued trading between the 6th of April 2019 and now. And I imagine the intention is that for those people who were self-employed but have now ceased to be self-employed would be excluded from this scheme, although I'm not 100% sure on this either. So if you are still self-employed, let's carry on. And then the next question is, are you still trading when you're applying for this support, or would you still be trading were it not for COVID-19? If the answer is yes, then there is yet another question that HMRC have flagged, which is, do you intend to continue trading in the tax year 2020-21? So that's the tax year that begins on the 6th of April 2020 and finishes on the 5th of April 2021. I must admit I have absolutely no idea how they are planning to police intention, but the question is there, so let's make the assumption that if the intention is no, then that's probably going to exclude you to take part in the support scheme. Next question, have you lost trading profits due to COVID-19? Once again, I'm not quite sure what enforcement measures are going to be put in place, but looks like if the bottom line is that trading profits have not been lost as a result of COVID-19, then it's unlikely that you will qualify for this scheme. If, however, there are lost trading profits, then we go to the very, very final question, which is whether more than half of your total income for the tax year is derived from self-employment. And for most of you, this is going to be a fairly obvious answer. For those of you where it might be marginal, or if it's not quite obvious, this spreadsheet actually provides you with support to try and establish the answer to this question. So if you know that you, for example, have got a main employment that earns you £30,000 a year, and you've got a tiny little self-employment that is £2,000 a year, and you're pretty sure that the answer is no, then I would say don't bother with this spreadsheet. You're not likely to be included. On the other hand, if you know that the answer is definitely yes, or it's a maybe, then I suggest you move on to the spreadsheet and start working through that now. Now, when you look at the spreadsheet is going to ask you certain questions. And I would just like to highlight what we currently understand the basis of calculations is going to be. What you see here is an example SA302 screenshot. So this SA302 you actually all receive from us alongside your tax returns if we prepare your tax returns for you. On this large bundle with loads and loads of pages that you receive, towards the end of it, there will be a sheet which is called Individual Tax Return for tax year 6th of April 18 to 5th of April 19 for whatever your name is, and it will say Tax Calculation SA302. And we think that this is going to be the basis for the calculation. The two figures that you are interested in are the profit from self-employment and the total income received. So you may well have various sources of income all listed under income received, But what we are interested in is the profit from the self-employment and the total income received. There are two steps that you need to work through in order to get to the result, and I'm going to work through this as an example for demonstration purposes. So in the first question, in step 1, we are looking at your 2018-19 SA 302. And if you have made a profit from self-employment in that tax year, in 18-19, then I would like you to fill in the information in step 1. If you made a loss from self-employment in 18-19, then please skip this step and move straight away to step 2. So the first question here is, how much was your profit from self-employment? Using this example, the profit from self-employment in this case was £34,220. The next question is, how much was the total income that you received? And the total income here was £38,110. Now, what the spreadsheet does then is it calculates the percentage of your self-employment income compared to your taxable income, your total taxable income, and it also calculates what your self-employment trading profits are. The qualification criteria to access this scheme is a combination of the percentage of taxable income and the trading profit. Now, the percentage of self-employment income compared to the taxable income must be above 50%, and the trading profit must be below £50,000. And what the guidance says is that you can do this calculation either just for tax year 18-19, or you can take an average of the last 3 years, and if you pass this criteria either just based on the 18-19 figures or the average of the last 3 years figures, then you can access the scheme. So in step 1, if your cell C13 and cell C15 are beautiful and green, then that means that you are likely able to access this scheme. Now, regardless of whether at this point you've got 2 green ticks or whether you haven't got 2 green ticks, you need to continue to step 2. The reason for that is because how much you would be able to get actually depends on an average of earnings between 16-17, 17-18 and 18-19. Now, if you haven't been self-employed for 16-17, for example, only for 17-18 and 18-19, that's okay. But it will either be those 3 years of averages or 2 years of averages of 1 year of averages. It's not clear whether self-employment losses are going to be counted for averaging purposes. My logic says that they will probably be counted for averaging purposes. So, for example, if you've got 2 years where you made a loss and 1 year where you made a ginormous profit, I would say profit less 2 years losses divided by 3 would be what HMRC are basing the calculations on. However, I'm not 100% certain, and please take everything here with a large disclaimer, as I mentioned. So for the purposes of this exercise, let's assume that we have been self-employed for quite some time and we are able to provide all 3 years worth of figures. So the question here is, how many tax years data are you going to be providing? If you're providing 16, 17, 17, 18 and 18, 19, then you need to enter 3. If you're providing only 17, 18 and 18, 19, then you need to enter 2. And if you're only providing 18, 19 figures because you became self-employed sometime in 18, 19, then you'll need to enter 1. Now, if you filled in step 1, then the 18, 19 figures are already provided for you. If you haven't, then obviously please fill them in. And also work through your 17, 18 and your 16, 17 figures as well. So in our case, I'm going to make the assumption that we have got slightly variable figures here. And this particular case, the self-employed earnings vary reasonably between tax years. Now, what the calculator does then is it calculates the percentage, the average percentage of self-employment income, and it also calculates the average trading profits throughout those years. Once again, if you haven't passed the qualification criteria in step 1, but you have passed the qualification criteria in step 2, then you should be able to access this scheme. So it's an either or. You either pass it in 1 or you pass it in 2. And if this is the case, then please look at the results. If on the other hand, you haven't been able to pass the qualification criteria either in 1 or 2, then unfortunately it's unlikely that this scheme is going to be accessible for you. So looking at the results then, the first question is, did you pass the qualification criteria in step 1? If you did, then just change it to yes. And if you changed it in step 2, then change it to yes. If you didn't pass it in step 1, but you passed it in step 2, then this is what it would look like. What the system does then is it calculates what we think the grant figure, the support figure is likely to be. I can only emphasize, please take it with a big pinch of salt. This is literally just based on the very scant guidance that we have at this point in time. But we do need to make some assumptions for cash flow purposes and so forth. So I would say for now, this is the best guess and this is the best help we are able to provide you with. Once you've done your calculations, please could you send them to us? We'll have a look at it. We'll see whether anything is glaringly not quite correct. And if you do have any other questions, please send them our way and we will work through them the quickest way that we can.